Hey y'all, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be talking about object variables. Now, I've kind of given you a sneak peek in previous videos talking about primitive variables and object variables. And honestly, right now, it's not the best time, or according to AP College Board, to talk about object variables. They don't get into it until Unit 2. However, I think right after talking about and introducing primitive variables, it's nice to see the contrast between a primitive variable and an object variable. This will help you start developing those mental models so that you can be great with object variables later on, because they do come later on and they can be a little tricky. So that's why I'm introducing it now, so that it can help you as you're starting to develop those mental models. Now, it's pretty simple. A primitive variable stores the actual value. We said that right now. Okay, we said that before. And to identify a primitive variable, we said that all primitive variables start with a lowercase letter. Now, if a primitive variable stores actual value, and I'm contrasting the object variable with that, what do you think the object variable stores? Did you say not the actual value? Well, if you did, or if you thought it, you're correct. An object or a reference variable stores the memory address of the object. So the object is not stored inside the object variable, but rather where I can find the object variable is stored. Think of it as the difference between storing your actual house in a box versus a piece of paper with the address of your house is stored in the box. So the way we can create an object variable is we have the class name, and we've talked about class names from the very first video. Class name, variable name, assign, and there's this new keyword, and we have a class name constructor call. To be honest, you don't need to know any of this right now, okay? We'll talk about it. You'll be confident with it in Unit 2. But what I do want to do is let's start comparing primitive variables with this. Remember, the primitive variable is variable type, variable name, assign, value on the right side, right? So the object variable follows a very similar syntax. Instead of variable type, it's the class name. We still have the variable name, right? So variable type is class name. The variable name is the same. The assignment is the same. The right side is different though, okay? So here we have our student1 variable name. That's the label of our box. And inside of our box, we have some memory address. Now, typically when I create memory addresses, I just come up with a random one with some hexadecimal value. That's what the 0x stands for. But you can write anything in there, A, B, C. Typically, I don't write numbers in there because it can be too confusing you might accidentally think that it's a value. Anyways, here is our address. This is our memory address, the location of where I can find the student object. So I go along this road and I find the address, and somewhere in memory is where the actual student object lives. Okay, so similarly, we've encountered strings before. We've talked about one way to create strings. There's another way to create strings. String, class name, variable name, assign, and we can use the new string with parentheses and the string we want to create. Before, we've always done just this thing inside of parentheses on the right side, but there's actually another way. Again, you're not going to be responsible for any of this stuff until Unit 2, but I do want to just show this to you that there are other ways of doing things. So once again, we have a string1, that's the label of our box, our variable name. And inside of our box is not the actual string object. It's a location, it's a memory address that I can take to find the actual string object that I created. And it's going to be somewhere in memory. So remember, a character is represented with single quotes. A string is represented with double quotes. You can think of a string as a combination of one or more characters. Now, we talked about one way of creating a string, this is the one you're used to. String, string2, assign a new string, in quotations. There's actually a formal way of doing it. String, string1, assign a new string, and then we have hello world. Now remember, rule number 1, programmers are lazy. We don't like to type too much. We want to type as little as possible. So because we create strings so often, there is a shortcut to creating them. You can create it the shortcut way, you can create it the formal way. Both work. Later on, we'll talk about some more complexities, why you might want to create one the formal way versus creating the shortcut way. But for now, just know that, hey, you can create it either way. So once again, the difference between a primitive and an object. Primitive variable types are all lowercase int, long, double byte, and object variable types start with a capital letter. This should be string and scanner. The R should be on the same line. I apologize. So to talk more about the object variable, the string, well, we have string blah, so that's my variable type, my variable name, and I assign it the string pine with a space. With a space. Variable type string, variable name blarg, assign it apple. So can we somehow combine these two strings? If you know the Picotaro song, the PPAP song, you might have an idea of how you might combine the strings. But otherwise, I'll see you in the next video where we talk more about computer science and all that jazz. All right, see you soon.